Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Paola Deda. Many of you, I think, know me. There are a lot of our delegates and stakeholders connected. But just for your information, I'm now the director of a newly established division at EC for Environment and Forests. So it's my pleasure to welcome you in this capacity. Today's International Forest, actually the International Forest Day was 2 days ago, but we celebrated today, reminds us of the critical role that forests play in supporting resilient economies, livelihoods, and ecosystems. And the discussion we are having today, we clearly highlight how forests are not only environmental assets, but also key pillars of sustainable economic development and the transition to our greener, more circular economies. Actually, IDF today coincides with the release of the latest World Meteorological Organization report, The State of Global Climate 2025. Probably many of you, like myself, have heard the news this morning from the radio and the TV. This State of Global Climate 2025 confirms that the past decade has been the warmest on record and that global temperatures continue to rise at an alarming pace. So in this context, forests are both highly vulnerable to climate change and essential to our response to it. So through carbon sequestration, biodiversity conservation, and the provision of sustainable materials. So today's webinar is an opportunity to reflect on how we can strengthen the role of forests and at the same time address climate change while supporting sustainable economic pathways. I will not be leading the conversation today. We are fortunate enough to have with us a series of excellent speakers and experts who will bring diverse perspectives and insight to this important discussion. We have about 600 participants registered, so you will see the number of participants growing as we go along, but please allow me to give the floor to our Executive Secretary, Ms. Tatiana Molsian, the Executive Secretary of UNECE, Under Secretary General of the United Nations, for her opening remarks. Over to you, Tatiana. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I hope you hear me well, colleagues. Yes. So distinguished colleagues, dear colleagues, let me also join Paula in welcoming you to this celebration of the International Day of Forests in 2026. I'm not one of the experts or the great speakers announced for today, but I'm definitely one of the enthusiasts when it comes to forests and celebrating the International Day of Forests. And I think this year, the fact that we are focusing on forests and economies, and which is a topic that is largely discussed worldwide across communities, countries, and also in organizations like at UNECE. And it's very timely to have these discussions. And it's also timely to rethink our relationship with environment, viewing forests not only as a resource to consume, but really as an engine for its future circularity in all our approaches. And today, I hope this is exactly what we are doing. We champion this path where we can measure this prosperity by the health of our ecosystems, or where every skyscraper that is built or garment, I see also the benefit of forest for fashion, but every garment one contributes to a more resilient land. For many years, UNECE region has really led the way in this area. And we had last year's UNECE 2025 Forest Profile Report that has shown progress, but this progress is definitely under pressure. Wildfires, drought, diseases are really slowing our pace. And this vulnerability really reminds us also the fact that we cannot use what we don't grow and protect. And this is why I'm really looking forward to very practical approaches on this that's called 360 degrees journey of today, that showcases that forests are, in a way, the real foundation of the future, as we see very practical examples from, understand, from mass timber transforming skyscrapers into carbon sinks, or wood-based fibers replacing fossil fuel textiles. And also, I know there will be a session on innovation or innovative wood-based biomaterials and how to really turn waste into value. Again, I mean, in UNECE really helps to drive the shift to a circular and forest-based economy, and we have been supporting all of you and all of the countries from the region and beyond the use of sustainable wood in construction, and not only. I've mentioned already the Forest for Fashion, where we promote the certified forest fibers and greater sustainability in the sector. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, these practical solutions, but which we need to scale up and really to achieve a difference on the ground. Economically, we have seen that the signals and the appetite, I might say, is there. The global bioeconomy is projected to reach 7.7 trillion by 2030. And we see that in Europe alone, it already employs over 17 million people. And these figures really represent a massive opportunity to align climate ambition with the economic survival that we are also seeing as a need this day. With that, I will leave for a more expert-driven discussion, and I wish all of us an inspiring exchange today. And I hope we also have a very continued determination to protect, but also to restore the forests that sustain us. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Secretary Mosian, and thank you for being with us always for International Day of Forests, always celebrating with us. This is really appreciated. And also thank you for the support to the work of forests within ECE. Now, as you said, we are really entering the expert talks, and I leave it to Sarah, my colleague Sarah Pecchinotti next to me, to take you through the agenda and then to the various segments of this event. Always a pleasure to see you all, although virtually, and hopefully next time we'll be meeting in person. But I think it's also important to have these events that really keep the forest community around a screen. What matters is we keep repeating the very important concept about the circular bioeconomy that this biome can support. Over to you, Sarah, and I leave my chair also to. Thank you.
Thank you, Paola, and thank you, Executive Secretary. The agenda will pop up on the screen in less than a second. Like Paola said, and like the name of the event suggests, we will take you on a journey today from the forest to the final product. We will explore how natural resources are transformed into sustainable industries and solutions. And to do that, we will start with addressing the important question of, can our forests actually support a bioeconomy without being destroyed? And we will have examples from Austria and Canada. We will then move to the construction industry with mass timber and low carbon cities. We will then move on to the fashion industry, highlighting the role of wood-based fibers. And then we will end up in the innovation lab, where the future may have some interesting materials and solutions for us. A couple of practical announcements. The event is being recorded. Please feel free to use the chat as much as you wish. We might have times to open the floor for questions and answers to our speakers and experts. So we will monitor the chat and make sure nothing goes unread. Yeah, the event is co-moderated by the whole section, the Forest and Bioeconomy section of UNECE. And with this, I welcome Roman Michalak to take the floor and moderate the first chapter.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to the first chapter of our journey. As Sarah said, my name is Roman Michalak, and I'm in charge of forest monitoring and assessment work in the EC Forest and Bioeconomy section, and I will have a pleasure to moderate this session. When we talk about the modern forest bioeconomy, we often focus on the impressive range of products it can deliver and the many innovative ways that wood can be transformed today. Yet, at the heart of all these products and innovation lies something very fundamental: forests themselves. Before we explore the opportunities that wood offers us, let's take a moment to have a look at the forest of the EC region, the current state, the pressures they face, and how they are performing. This is the moment when this journey begins. So forests in the EC region cover around 1.8 billion hectares, which corresponds to 42% of the global forest area. It's hard to even imagine this area. So if we put this differently, this corresponds to 1.3 hectares per person. And if we translate this, is about 2 football, or if you like, soccer fields per person. Those forests, as we already heard today, do far more than produce wood. They shelter biodiversity, store carbon, clean air and water, offer space for recreation and well-being, and finally also provide a remarkable array of products. Among these, wood holds a special place. We will hear more about this later today, but let me just share one more figure that illustrates this importance. Every year, about 1.5 billion cubic meters is delivered by forests in the region. And again, it's very difficult to figure out this, so it is about 1 cubic meter per person in the UNECE region, which is twice more than average globally. So there is an interesting material that can be delivered and transported in many ways, and definitely as it's a precious material and it's worth to be processed in the best possible, avoiding any waste and adding all possible value. But talking about the EC region, this region also is characterized by great diversity, both in distribution of forest and human populations. And the approaches that country applies to managing and using the forest also differ highly. And it is impossible to present the whole variety today in this short session. However, we are fortunate to have 2 outstanding experts with us today who will share insights from 2 distinct parts of our region: the boreal forest of Canada and temperate forest of Austria. Our first speaker is Dr. Darren Sleep. Dr. Sleep is the chief scientist with the Forest Products Association of Canada, based in Ottawa, Ontario. His work focuses on science policy integration, forestry, wildlife management, biological diversity, and the development of partnerships with natural resource industries, academics, and like-minded research organizations. Darren has extensive experience working with the forest sector across North America, and globally across the world's circumpolar boreal forests. I would like to invite Darren to deliver his presentation, Rooted in Resilience, Boreal Forest Economics, and the Long View of Sustainability. Darren, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roman. And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening to this from. I can say here in Ottawa, it's a little after 9 in the morning, so I have not yet gotten to my second cup of coffee. But according to Roman, I now have to make some plans to go visit North Africa. So that's awesome. Thanks. So this morning, I've been asked to give a few comments on boreal forests and resilience and sustainability, and I call it the long view of sustainability because we often forget that as much as sustainability is about balancing economic ambition with biological potential, it's also significantly about time and thinking about sustainability in the long term. At its core, sustainability is a really simple concept. You can explain this to a 5-year-old and they get it. That harvesting trees means growing trees, protecting wildlife at the same time, and conserving the functions of these ecosystems. But what is often missed in this conversation is that we're not talking about doing this for a year or 10 years or 50 years. We're talking about doing this generationally. Some would say 7 to 10 generations down the road. We're thinking very, very long term about sustainability, and that element of time is often missed when we talk about sustainability. And sustainability is really all about time. Now, when I was an undergraduate student, which now feels like about 1 million years ago, that figure you see up in the right-hand side of your screen, the 3 overlapping circles, this is how sustainability was described to me. The 3 legs of the stool, where ecological function, economics, and society all come together, and it's about finding that balance point between all 3, else the system doesn't work. And I think we've come to shift that now, and these circles are now nested within one another, and are interrelated up and down. So it's this ecological function, carbon sequestration and storage, biodiversity, water, natural disturbances, wildlife, what have you. That big green circle encompasses everything else. Within that is the economics, and that's resilience and employment and human needs. So when we think about economics, I'm not saying this is about industrial forestry. What I'm saying is this is about whatever system of economics we have, whether it's whether it's an agrarian society, whether it's simple bartering of systems. It doesn't matter. The ecological envelope encompasses the economic envelope, and then within the economic envelope is society. What we build as humans, what we build as people, sort of falls in there and keeps it all running. Now, you can have societal collapse, and you can have economic collapse, and the ecology will still function. The environment will go on. But it doesn't work the other way. If you do not have the environment, the economics and society do not sustain themselves. And again, we often forget that. So I'm going to focus my comments today primarily on what we call the circumpolar boreal forest, which is all the way around from Canada. We hold about 30% of the boreal forest is in Canada. The boreal forest makes up about 1/3 of the world's forests in total. It is definitely the world's largest forested biome. And as I note here on the slide, it's a major regulator of global climate and freshwater regulation. It's an interesting ecosystem, and I've spent my entire career, I would say 90% of what I've done has been focused on the boreal forest and the creatures and inhabitants that live there. It tends to be a very cold biome. It tends to have long, cold winters, short but sometimes warm summers. Of course, with climate change, it's becoming shorter winters and longer, hotter, drier summers, and that's causing all kinds of other interesting phenomena, we'll call it. And because it is a northern biome, it tends to be fairly low in diversity. Generally, it's characterized by a short growing season, so it's not highly productive. But in the contrast to that, even though it's not highly productive, because of these long, cold winters, it tends to store a lot of carbon. Once the trees grow, they decay very slowly. There's very thick humus soils, lots of carbon stored in the soils. So it's a really unique environment where you would say a lot of both trees, plants, and animals all live kind of at the edge of survival, because it tends to be a very rough environment to make a living in. There are challenges to managing in the boreal. Every forested biome, every ecosystem really has its pros and cons. And one of the challenges of the boreal is that it is very much driven by disturbance, by fire, by insects, and that sort of thing. The advantage to that is we can use those natural occurring phenomena like fire, and we can mimic it using the emulation of natural disturbance through management. So that's kind of a strength to it. But the challenges come in these sort of ongoing drivers. Climate change is driving ever worsening fire frequencies and severities. that changes pest distribution and vulnerabilities, and it forces ecosystem shifts. If you burn a forest once, especially a boreal forest, it's fine. You burn it twice, it's okay. Once you burn it enough times in a row, the trees don't come back, and instead we get graminoids, grasses that come back every year. So it does cause this changing ecosystem over time. And of course, there's this cumulative effects. It's not just forestry, but there's also multiple impacts of forestry, mining, critical minerals, energy, and hydropower. All these things play into it. And then finally, we have sort of policy and what I call trust challenges. There's extra market policy forces, be it sustainability, markets, duplicative and redundant regulations across the entire system. And then there's risks to markets, credibility, and social license. If people don't believe it's sustainable, it does affect markets eventually. And then we pile on some of these issues we have. This whole conversation is about is there a capacity to meet a rising bioeconomic challenge? Can we meet this rising global demand for wood, fiber, and bio-based materials? Then there's geopolitical matters that we all know are affecting the way things move, the way trade moves, where routes are compromised, markets aren't available, some markets are sort of banned. Then there's carbon markets, deforestation and degradation rules that we see coming out of the EUDR and issues like that. So there's all these geopolitical matters. Then there's also this bit of a drive to reshape sustainability in global markets, changing what we mean by sustainability. It's no longer just about can the trees produce enough, but is the forest being degraded? And there's lots of folks trying to weigh in on what sustainability means to them. And of course, we have global equity challenges. We have to really think about who benefits from the forest and who bears the risk. And under all of these pressures, we are asking ourselves this question: can the boreal forest in particular, and the forests of the world, sustain a growing global bioeconomy? And when I say sustain, I mean, can we do this over the long term? So my answer to that question, at least from a Canadian boreal forest position, is it's a yes, but. Yes, Canada can support a growing bioeconomy. We're well positioned. Forest management is publicly regulated, science-based, well monitored, third-party certified, and we focus more and more increasingly on each tree, what we can do with each tree, rather than cutting more trees. So we're not increasing the amount we're cutting, but we are doing more with those trees at a smaller environmental risk. But sustainability has to be the gatekeeper, not an afterthought. Sustainability has to be thought of at the front of the question, not at the back of the question, because weakened sustainability will inevitably lead to trade barriers, lost consumer confidence, reputational risk, and markets will respond to that sort of thing. So again, I go back to my diagram of sustainability, and it does mean that environment, society, and the economy are a package deal. If one fails, if it's the ecological function fails, they all fail. So it's not that you can lose one, you can be off on one and it'll be fine. You have to keep them all together. Finally, I'm going to end with this quote. The circumpolar boreal forest will be increasing exports to the world, no question. The only real question is whether it will be products that help combat climate change or emissions that exacerbate them. I love this quote, and this is incredibly bad taste to quote oneself. But I came to this realization about a year and a half ago, and this has really stuck with me ever since. That we are going to be exporting from the boreal forest. The question is, what will we be exporting? And with that, Roman, I will pass the microphone back.
Thank you very much, Darren. I think that was really informative, but also very important piece of information, set of information. Also because boreal forests, as we found in our studies, in our work, are well undiscovered. And actually, Dr. Sleep was a reviewer of our study, and I shared the link in the chat just recently on boreal forests, when you can also see how more about the conditions, state, performance of this forest, threats, use. in all parts of the UNECE region. As time is not on our side, let us go to the next speaker, who is Mr. Johannes Hangler. And Mr. Hangler is a Deputy Director at Austria's Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, Climate and Environmental Protection, Regions and Water Management. Johannes is an expert in forest policy and sustainable forest management with long-standing involvement in national and European forestry initiatives. His work supports balancing ecological integrity with economic development in forest sectors. And I would like to invite Johannes to share his presentation, Sustainable Forest Management in Austria, Developments, Challenges and Solutions. Johannes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Roman. I will share my presentation. And good afternoon to everyone celebrating International Day of Forests with us. I will give you a brief insight into sustainable forest management in Austria, what the situation is like in the forest and how we are tackling the challenges. And we are not alone. Developments are similar in other European countries, particularly in Central Europe. In Austria, multifunctionality is the guiding principle. All forests are expected to fulfill all functions. In mountainous areas, the protective function is particularly important. Protection against avalanches, mudslides, rockfall, flooding. For Austria's strong timber industry, the supply of wood as a raw material, and for tourism, the forest as a recreational area. Also carbon storage in forests and in wood products, and the forest as a habitat for many plants and animals are key. The forest area has been grown steadily over the last 50 years and now covers more than 4 million hectares, which is 48% of the total land area. 84% are productive forest. More than 80% are in private ownership, mostly small forest owner. Many of them are also farmers. The growing timber stock has also been increasing for a long time. Currently, there are nearly 1.2 billion cubic meters of timber in Austrian forests. The productive forest has an average volume of 350 cubic meter per hectare. Recently, however, we have noticed a change in this trend. Growing stock is likely to have peaked. There are several reasons for this slight decline. Let us first look at the development of increment and harvest. Increment has been declining since the turn of the millennium. Harvest, on the other hand, has increased. Most recently, we recorded an utilization rate of 97%. A look at the age class structure provides one explanation for the decrease in increment. This figure shows that the proportion of trees with large diameters has increased in recent decades. Aging forests lead to a decline in timber growth. Middle-aged stands are growing the fastest. However, the factor likely to have the most serious long-term consequences for the decline in timber growth is climate change. For a long time, rising temperatures led to longer growing seasons and increased wood growth. In recent decades, however, dry periods have become longer summers have become too hot for some tree species, and storm damage has become more frequent. Storm or snow damage is followed by insect infestations, and dead trees do not grow. Calamities and damaged timber have led to an increase in timber harvesting. In several years, salvage logging accounted for more than 50%, for more than 50% of the Austrian removals. What is Austria doing to combat this development and the risk of losing more forests? Our forests need to become more resilient. The main tasks are to adapt our forests to the changing climate conditions, to restore damaged forests, and to regenerate old forests timely. Old trees are more vulnerable and grow less. Harvesting creates space for growth. This can only be achieved through forest management, as this is the only way to tackle these enormous tasks in terms of finances and resources. Active sustainable forest management is the order of the day. This requires people on the ground, motivated people who know what needs to be done. Motivating the many small forest owners is not easy. The opportunity to earn money is important, but not enough. Social recognition, the feeling of being part of the solution, and simple rules are also key. Let's take a look at the economic side. In a country like Austria, with a high proportion of mountain forests and high timber harvesting costs, this requires correspondingly high timber prices. Only a strong and competitive timber processing industry is able to pay good roundwood prices. Functioning markets, competition, and high value-added wood products are helpful in this regard. Wood energy plays an important role in the utilization of low-value timber. Everyone wants to produce valuable veneer or sawlogs, but whole trees are always felled, and the poor quality wood also needs buyers. Sometimes support measures are unavoidable, especially after calamities with large amounts of timber, with large amount of damaged timber and high costs for reforestation with climate-resilient tree species. The Austrian federal government has recognized the problem and responded by setting up a National Forest Fund in 2020. The fund has been endowed with 430 million euro. The most important measures are the restoration of forests after calamities, support for climate change adaptation in forests, and the promotion of wood use, especially in wood construction, our external carbon sinks. The future of our forests is closely linked to the economy. In my view, the theme of the year's Forest Day is well chosen, and I'm confident that the various stakeholders in the timber value chain in Austria will continue to work together effectively and successfully, thereby ensuring that Austrian forests continue to support the bioeconomy and fulfill their diverse functions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johannes, also for indicating this particular moment that actually is shared not only by Austria but other countries in Europe where there is already achieved or coming to achieve the tipping point in the growth of volume. So far, we heard a lot about this continuous growth of amount of wood growing in forests. Recent data shows that actually this growth is not continued anymore, and this also set the scene for further developments in the region. Also, I shared another link if you would like to learn more about EC forests. Our recent publication, 2025 profile, has been released last year, and you have a link. I encourage you to look up. The work provides 360 overview on not only forests but the owners, managers, services, and overall condition as well threats. Then, Darren, Johannes, we have just heard about state and friends of forests in your countries, about how they can contribute or contribute to supplying wood for a growing bioeconomy. But now I would like to invite you to look at this matter from the opposite side. Could you share some insights? How will the development of bioeconomy influence forests and their management, especially given the rising demand of wood? And what are the approaches, strategies to manage these impacts in the short and long term? So how do you think bioeconomy may help forests? We heard that forests can enable and make possible bioeconomy. So maybe this time we reverse sequence. So Johannes, maybe if you would like to share your feedback.
Yes, thank you. Of course, trees don't grow to the sky, that's clear. But there is still a potential to increase harvest on the one side without endangering sustainability. And as Darren said, we can do more with the felled trees. So we can increase the efficiency in producing and using wood products. And of course, we should prioritize higher value products. And on the other side, bioeconomy will guarantee or will help to have good roundwood prices. And as I already said, good roundwood prices are a guarantee or will help that the forest owners, especially the small ones, will not lose the interest on managing the forests. So bioeconomy will help to motivate the forest owners to manage their forests actively and as a byproduct to adapt the forests to the changing climate.
How do you think bioeconomy can support Canadian forests and forest owners and managers?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and I think Johannes actually hit on something that I think is very important. Not long ago, or relatively not long ago, we'll say 2 decades ago, maybe, I have seen forest managers with a very limited budget go into stands that had some badly growing trees or low value products, and they would pull them out to roadside and leave them on roadside for locals who wanted to come and take some of it. But inevitably, a lot of it just ended up, rotting at roadside because they were doing stand improvement activities, but there was a very limited budget to do it. Now, with the emerging bioeconomy and more value for that, what we would call poorer timber, there's now a market for some of that stuff, which means they still leave some at roadside for locals who want to harvest it, but more of it can go to market. They can get more budget, that then they can do stand improvement in more places. And that stand improvement means better carbon sequestration, which is good for the environment, and more incentive for that sort of work to get done. So I think that's really key, is recognizing the strength of the forest to act as a climate mitigator, and having that economic incentive to do so makes it better. I think Johannes captured it right on. What is needed in a place like Austria and in pretty much everywhere is active forest management that does a good job at maintaining the natural value, the natural ecosystemic values of carbon sequestration and carbon storage, to help us mitigate climate change over the long term.
Much. Just we have a few questions from the chat. So just one, and if you could address one for each of you, if you could address this briefly. So the first is for Darren. Which are for you the main activities measures to support the idea of doing more with each tree, not cutting more trees?
It's a great question. So I've visited a company, again, my memory, I say it was recently, but it's probably farther away than I remember. But I remember there was a facility that they had integrated a lot of different product uses into one industrial area. So they had shared services like electrician and mechanic who would work across all 4 or 5 of the businesses. But when one tree came into that facility, very little of that tree left the facility. Every bit of that tree was being used, from the tops to the trunks. Even so, they would use bark and whatnot in the boiler for heat. The only thing that they had trouble with in terms of waste product was ash from the boiler, because they didn't have a use for the ash for the boiler. But every other bit of that tree went in and never was returned to a landfill or anything like that, which I think is incredibly important. So it's having more products that we can pull from the tree, from different parts of the tree, makes so that we can do more things with one tree. And then, if we're talking whether it's biodiesel or nanocellulose or any of these amazing products that we're making, I think that's the key, is diversified product lines, diversified product markets.
Thank you. I think it reminds me of the old saying I heard some time ago, I think in our conference, that all wood is good. That was something that really reflects what you said. And Johannes, there is a question about monoculture or difference. Are monoculture, even age wood plantations, are less resilient to climate change, fire, pests than natural forests? I know the question is big, but if you just reflect a little bit on that, about resilience of these 2 types of forests, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on plantations. So in Austria, we don't have plantations. We always try to work with the nature. And of course, we have planted trees, but if the planted trees get older, many times you can't differentiate if they were planted or natural regenerated. So the largest part of our forests is natural regenerated, and all forests managed close to nature, I would say.
Thank you. We have to give space to colleagues who are coming in the next session. So thank you very much. I think that we refer to your questions, other questions in the chat later on. So then, yes, we heard that forest can deliver material for bioeconomy, and active sustainable forest management plays key role for this purpose. And at the same time, foresters, forest owners also have to be supported, and bioeconomy can play a role. But what happens with wood coming from our forests, we hear in the next sessions. And thanking Johannes, Darren, and all of you who put the questions, I would like to invite my colleague, Florian Steyer, to moderate the next session of our journey. Let's go ahead.
Thank you, Roman, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Florian Steyrer. I'm working here at the UNECE and working on forest products, markets, and marketing, and wood energy. One of the fields of our work is low carbon construction here in Geneva. We look beyond the border of the forest and see what can be done in an economic way, in an efficient way with the resources. We've been doing that for 80 years. And wood construction has seen a tremendous development over the last 25 years. We've also done some work in our section already. I just want to highlight the policy guidelines for low carbon construction in cities in our work. That gives at hand for policymakers some information how the wood as material is seen from the construction side and from urban planning. Also, we looked at the issue of how much wood raw material is available in our outlook study, the forest sector outlook study for the UNECE region 2020 to 2040. And there you can also find two scenarios on wood construction to calculate the impact of a steeply increased use of wood for construction in the future. And these modelings were done even before the strong push for the circular bioeconomy. So we do support developments in the low carbon construction area under the premise that it is forest positive. So like we heard before, there's a revenue that needs to come to the forest owner. There's an incentive for the forest, and it's all happening under very strict regulations so that the forest is increasing biodiversity and the many functions they have. So with this experience in wood construction, I went also to a fair in Nancy about 4 years ago in 2022. And that is where I met Oscar. I mean, I saw a presentation from Oscar Norredius, and I'm very happy that Oscar agreed to give a presentation today. We will have two presentations in this segment. In this chapter, we call the skyline shift. So it's really changing the way we use wood for construction. And I'm very pleased to introduce Oscar Norredius, who is a Swedish architect and a partner of White Architecture on Scandinavia's leading architecture firm. He's the office director in Stockholm, and since joining White Architect, he has played a key role in the firm's international development and design strategy. His projects include Stockholm Wood City, a mixed-use urban district set to become the world's largest development project in wood, and the multi-award-winning Sara Cultural Center, which I just alluded to. I'm very happy to have you here and to give a presentation on timber as a driver for a new culture of building from an architectural perspective. Oscar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
I will also try to thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me on this International Day of Forests. Very interesting presentation so far. I hope I can add some perspective from our work. Could you just let me know that you see the screen all right? Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk construction and the possibilities of using timber in architecture and urban development. As mentioned, I'm an architect and a director at White Architect in Stockholm. We're a Scandinavian practice working internationally at all scales, from urban design and landscape architecture down to architecture and interiors. And this is the vision that we're working towards, that all our architecture should be carbon neutral and regenerative through design excellence. And while pushing to achieve this vision, we have learned these last decades that wood is an exceptional material in transitioning to a more green construction sector, but it also opens up great opportunities for new architecture and new typology of cities that I will go through in this presentation. Of course, timber is well known in Scandinavia. It's part of our building tradition. In smaller buildings, we've worked with this material for centuries and millennia. We have, with the arrival of engineered timber and mass timber, transitioned into more large-scale construction over the last 20-25 years, I would say. And through these projects of increasing complexity, we've really understood the potential of using this material, both from an environmental perspective. As we said, the fact that we do have plenty of resources locally here in Scandinavia, the potential for circularity and carbon neutrality, and also all the benefits of the actual construction site. But also more and more understanding the psychological effects that this material can have within the built environment, even as the scale is increasing and our habitats are being urbanized. And one of the key projects that Florian mentioned is the Sara Culture Center in Skellefteå. And I think this project has been a pioneer for timber construction, not just in its height. It was the first 20-story building to be realized entirely with mass timber. Even the stabilizing cores, all of the stabilization basically of the building are made from mass timber. But also because the choice of using timber has really had an effect on the design and on the connection between this building and its city. You can see here as well that the location for such a project is not chosen by hazard. There's plenty of resource around Skellefteå. It's one of the strongholds of the forest and timber industry in Sweden today. And through this project, what we learned and what we've been able to showcase through many publications is that this material really can have represent a shift in the culture of building that we're seeing today. Really addressing not just environmental, but also the social and economic challenges that we're facing. And we are convinced that this building culture must emerge, and we think that wood will be a key component to this. And here we are in the main entrance of the Sara Culture Center, standing below 20 stories of mass timber construction. And this is not just a climate positive building that stores more carbon than it emits during a 50-year period, but it's a framework for urban life. And the everyday life in this building is exceptional. Large-scale public spaces framed by mass timber really gives a different atmosphere, not just technically with a different indoor climate, but the feeling and the way people act within this building is completely different than from a regular building. So this, the development of this project was not just a tall building, it's also an urban context. It's really at the center of Skellefteå, a city in the north of Sweden. The building hosts a complex program and in many ways represents a library of solutions in timber architecture, ranging from these large span spaces that we see here that can be used for exhibitions and dance rehearsals as in the image, to the repetition of the hotel rooms and the acoustic requirements of the different theater stages, of which there are 6 within this building. So this has been a demonstrator in many ways that timber, there's a lot of potential working with wood in architecture. And beyond the finished building, the sourcing for this project was local. All of the timber came from a radius of 100 kilometers. The sawmill, the CLT factory, the prefabrication factory are very local, within 50 kilometers of the site. And working with the lightweight, the prefabrication and the efficiency of timber made this possible within the municipal budget. So it's not a showcase that's boosted by extra economy. It's really a viable project within the economy of today. And also want to mention the impact that this project has had on workers' conditions that can actually be monitored within safe working conditions in the factories as well. And to sum up our experiences from the Sara Culture Center, the potential it shows is that this, of course, is not a technical issue. It's not a matter of replacing a polluting material with something else. It's actually an architectural and cultural issue that we need to address in order to implement more timber construction in the construction industry. And the success of this project lies very much in its connection to the community and to the city, and the attention paid to the architecture. And in just 4 years, this building became the Swedish building that has been mostly published outside of Sweden ever. So building on this, we have continued with other types of projects, ranging from office buildings, housing projects as well. And I think today there is a portfolio of buildings representing all the different typologies we need in the city of the future, the mixed city, the complex city, all of these typologies can be realized with timber and with solutions that come off the shelf. But at the same time, there is a huge potential for innovation and development in how we use timber, how we regulate the construction industry to allow timber to really perform at its best. And this, of course, requires interdisciplinary collaboration. It requires an interest in what happens in the forest, what happens on the construction site, what happens in the building, and between all the different disciplines engaged in construction. And of course, the development is very fast today. We can't do one building, learn from it, and do the next. We need to develop new solutions and knowledge within the project. So investing in research and development is key. And this is something that we do in-house, together with academia and within our projects, to really make sure we can implement new solutions within the projects and become more efficient faster than the realization of each building. And through these innovation processes, we've seen how the forest and timber can go beyond replacing another structural material and inspire the design and planning of our cities and our buildings, shaping new districts such as this one, the Stockholm Wood City, as an urban forest that, by maximizing greenery on roofs, facades, and the ground, can actually technically fulfill the criteria of an urban forest, providing ecosystem services and biodiversity, supporting biodiversity in the area, but also heightening the ambitions for circularity, for transformation, for reuse and energy efficiency by seeing the potential of using this material in the structure of buildings. And in the end, I think that the potential to really put people and nature at the center of development is increasing when engaging in bio-based construction in general. And I think that we also see the potential beyond the building. Of course, we're calculating carbon in each individual building and see that using timber coming from sustainable forestry is extremely performant today. But realizing this shift towards more bio-based construction, we can actually step by step transform our cities into giant carbon sinks and hopefully store all of the fossil CO2 emissions that we have generated in the last centuries in order to bring down the ppms in the atmosphere. And this is not just true in Scandinavia. We have a lot of interest to work with these questions in different contexts. This is a project in Amsterdam that we recently won in December for a whole district made with timber structures and bio-based insulation and facade materials. So the potential for this shift is not only in the countries where we have a forest industry established for a long time. I think this is something that can really support development in different areas of the world. And finally, my last slide is the all the time expanding responsibility of us as architects, going beyond shaping the place and the building that we're working on, going towards the responsibility for the people building these buildings, but also for the places where we source the material. And this is an exhibition we made for the Venice Biennale in 2023, where we put images of the untouched forest, the harvesting of the forest, the sawmill, with everyday life within the Sara Culture Center, to really show the connection between a building and the site where the material comes from, and the act of building that today has an impact well beyond the construction site. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you for your presentation and for this very deep insight into how architects see it and the urban forest in the wooden city that is also ringing a bell here in Geneva, which we work a lot on urban forest and sustainable cities. I will now come to the second presentation in our panel. We try to have very diverse views on the same topic. And after the knowledge management by the Architecture Bureau, I'm now happy to invite Rainer Strauch to give a presentation on a building solution that is also a huge knowledge management tool that they provide. It's the CREE Building Solutions. And with Rainer, we have the mastermind behind this kind of building solution with us. I'm very pleased to have you with us. Rainer, you're the managing director and chief technical officer at CREE. I stop here. You have a lot of experience in in the engineering side. So you're not coming from the architecture side, but you're an engineer. And with that, I think you will have a different view on things, but we're coming to the same step in the same solution and same conclusions in the end. So Ryan, I'm very happy to have you here in 3 Solutions, and the floor is yours.
Likewise, Florian, thank you for having me. Thanks to all of you for listening in here. Thanks to Oscar. Fantastic buildings, fantastic work, I must say. So I'm going to share my screen. And would like to take you into the world of Cree buildings. So what my point is today, after we have heard a lot of exciting things from the speakers before me about the necessity of utilizing wood, especially in the built environment, I would like to make you think of timber as a system for industrialized construction. So to enable this low carbon technology to become mainstream. And the question here is, why hasn't timber construction gone mainstream? We hear a lot about it. We have some great projects out there, but it's still the majority of construction happening without a single bit of timber, except in flooring and doors and furniture. Why is that? I think from our perspective, it's because in too many cases, still timber just replaces a different material like concrete or steel, but the processes behind and how we build buildings and how we design them stay the same. And that leads to a lot of complexity. We reinvent every new building, everything is designed from scratch, nothing repeats itself. This is how conventional construction works. There's a lack of consistency, a lack of repetitiveness, and this comes along with great risks, with variety, with less predictability, everything that also investors do not like very much. And then we are talking about cost, and I'm not saying that every timber building necessarily have to be more expensive, but if you consider wood just as a replacement of another building material, you will most likely end up with higher cost. So the question is not so much, should we build with wood? I think that has already been answered. The real question is, how do we make it scalable? And Cree Buildings has pursued that from the beginning in 2008 when we started our research project Lifecycle Tower to see the system behind it and not just treat it as a substitute material. Back then, we did a lot of research and a lot of testing with building components that are based on wood. And one major aspect or major aspiration was to reduce the overall material that goes into our buildings. So what we came up with is still a mixture of concrete, steel, and wood, but the main components of a building are mainly made of wood. So what you see here is some bracing elements where we still rely on the strength of concrete and steel. Then we've got wall elements that are mainly composed of wood, not even necessarily engineered wood. It can also be just dimensioned lumber that makes timber frames. Those walls come in a highly prefabricated manner. The grid extensions are supported by steel girders, can be also timber or concrete girders, and then our main floor elements that are a composite reaction of timber and concrete. After all, that reduces the concrete in a building by about 60 to 70%. And what we can do is build about 10 square meters of usable space with 1 cubic meter of wood. And this is about 5 times more than in an all timber building. Very important also is that we just not focus on the we not just focus on the material itself, we also focus on the building as a whole, because that new material and that new approach of prefabrication and systemization need to go along with all other aspects of a building, with the mechanical, electrical services, with the interior fit outs, with the facade. And that makes a creep building that is highly prefabricated, especially in structure and shell, that makes use of industrial repetition, which comes with lower cost, higher quality, more predictability. We rely on a global network of suppliers that we call product and services partners and creators. So to have a local sourcing for everything we need. Creep buildings exist now on 3 continents, and we have not shipped large portions of these buildings around the globe. Everything has been designed and produced and installed locally. And finally, we have developed our scalable platform where all our knowledge and tools that you need to create a creep building are located and centralized. So that means, in fact, everyone who is busy in construction can build a creep building, which leads to real scalability. The system not only works for office buildings, for instance, that many of the creep buildings have been so far. It works for almost all asset classes in the construction and real estate realm. You see here residential, office, educational, hotel, student housing, and those are not theoretical projects, they are all existing. So I hope that the video comes across in a nice way, because it gives you an idea how a creep building goes up in incredible speed. So we managed to build one of those floors here in only 1 day. And I'm not talking about 1 day for a skeleton construction. We are creating enclosed spaces that are weathertight and airtight. And what you can nicely see here is on the floors, you also see interior fit out packages that come during the construction process. So everything gets lifted into place during the construction of the structure and the shell. Sustainability apparently is a main aspect, and let me go back, sorry. And many of our buildings have been certified according to international certification systems that you may be familiar with. And I would like to emphasize that sustainability is kind of inherent in creep buildings. But I think we believe that the speed, predictability, and the saving of materials is key. Here you can see nice examples of creep buildings, and I'm showing this just to show the versatility of this system. Don't think of like uniform buildings that you have seen in the past when it came to mass prefabrication. This is really versatile. It has architectural beauty, and it serves really the most purposes that you can imagine. The unique thing is the interior. It's repetitive, right? You see, you recognize creep buildings when you move in. And we know the resource exists. The resource of wood is plentiful. Just to remind you of the fact that every second there's one single family home growing with the forests we have. So we have the material, but we have the wrong processes. And the bottleneck is how we build, because many of those projects that are going up in wood are built still in a conventional mindset with conventional processes. And this is where Cree kicks in with a standardized, industrialized system where we unlock the full potential of that resource. And that's what I want to leave you with. So if you have questions on this timber hybrid system that really revolutionizes construction, then just let us know. And I'm very curious to hear your questions after that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Rainer. Thank you both. And we have prepared beforehand for this presentations, and you might wonder why we didn't talk about one of the elephants in the room. You can do so many things with wood as construction material. It's about systemizing it. Both examples want to contribute to the bioeconomy and the low carbon construction in the future from different angles. But there is one question also in the chat already: how can you build buildings that withstand floods? And one question is about fires. And we have a very, very short video from the Canadian Wood Products Council, and it's about fire testing. And I'm just asking my colleague just to quickly play it. It's about a minute.
The mass timber demonstration fire tests were tests that were conducted on a two-story structure made of mass timber. The scenarios that were conducted for testing were an open office space on the first story, finished residential suites on the top story, and coarser construction tests for a large-scale compartment, as well as a garbage can test for a small-scale compartment. What was discovered from the mass timber demonstration fire test was that mass timber can be exposed in a finished building safely because the mass timber protects itself using a char layer. So the wood burns. That char layer protects and insulates the interior mass timber structure. The fire dies down on its own, keeping the structure intact. Even after this 4-hour fire scenario, we still had structural strength of the compartment.
Wood is an excellent and sustainable material.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So that was just a shortcut just to explain that the fire resistance of modern wood construction, we don't really need to discuss it. If you do it properly and do it right, that can be taken as a given. But I wanted to ask the question to both speakers about this perception of wood burning. And wood is the oldest fuel of humanity. And I think that's one of the first questions always comes up to you. What about fire? And what are the big constraints, and how do you handle on your side this kind of this preoccupation by the users or by the public? I would start with Oscar and then have the same question to Rainer.
Thank you. And yes, it's a great question. And of course, by definition, timber is a combustible material. So this is something that needs to be handled very carefully in the projects. At the same time, mass timber has excellent qualities, and we can absolutely design buildings with great characteristics that are safe and safe for use in many different aspects, including fire resistance. And of course, the fire safety is not just protecting the material, it's mainly protecting the people within the buildings. So this is also a cultural issue that I think needs to be addressed differently in different countries, not just because of regulation, but also because of cultures and the construction sector. But I think that today the fire issue is not a practical issue when it comes to fire, because we have the knowledge to design and plan buildings. It's more an issue that we are today designing and building timber buildings within a framework set up for other materials. And this is generating extra cost, extra emissions from different solutions that are not necessary, and that I think will be phased out over time.
Thank you, Oscar. I hand it over to Rainer.
Yeah, thank you. My thoughts on it. Yeah, I'm observing several things here. I mean, we build internationally, our partners build internationally. And when it comes to code compliance, then fire seems to burn differently in every country, or even every municipality, right? Which is not true. We have countries that are governed by construction experts. Then we have countries where the codes are governed by insurances, and also there we have two different two different facets. The ones are the insurances that just want to see a certificate. They want to see an ETA or so, and if it's not there, then you cannot insure that building, which is very short-sighted, right? Then we have other countries where the insurances say we rely on data. How much more risky is a wood building indeed? And those are the governing bodies that are more advanced, definitely. And there was, for instance, in Switzerland, a time when the bar was raised from 60 minutes fire resistance to 90 minutes by the insurers. And then after a while, they have analyzed the data and realized that the damages did not go down. So basically, there was not more dead people, no more injuries. And so they went back to 60 minutes because it's sufficient to save the people, to save the firefighters, and to also save the building in most instances. And it also keeps the cost down, right? So there are really considerate people who know the value of property, who know the value of life. So we are not all hazard, like people who put others in hazard, right? It needs to be carefully designed. Ideally, the timber stays visible because timber that is hidden behind gypsum can burn without you even notice and can do a lot of other bad things. So that's why we want to see the wood. We want to use large cross sections, right? Because you cannot kindle a fire with a cubic meter of wood as a cube. That doesn't work. So the fuel analogy does not always work. And it's also predictability. Firefighters walk into a timber building when they know how long it burns already because they know how long it's resisting. That is not the case with concrete and steel. Concrete and steel collapses without any warning, right? So I could go on with this, but conscious of time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for this view on both sides on the fire. And I think it's to be continued. There are more questions in the chat. If you have time, please stay with us and maybe answer one or the other question in the chat. I want to thank you very much for your time and for your insight. These were really interesting presentations. And I'm very glad that you had time for us to be with us for this International Day of Forests. I want to hand over now the chairmanship of the day today to my chief of the section, Liliana Anavatsi-Jakab, to introduce us to the next chapter, the living wardrobe. Liliana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Florian, and a warm welcome to everyone on my behalf as well. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Very, very interesting discussion so far. And obviously, we all need to live somewhere. We need a shelter. But then again, we all need to dress. And as we know, fashion is creative, fashion is influential, fashion is fast, and fashion is also one of the one resource-intensive industries on Earth. So accounting for nearly 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and relying heavily on fossil-based synthetics. The take, make, waste model is still one of the most used models worldwide. So why are we actually talking about this on an International Day of Forest celebration? Because, believe it or not, as we heard before already, and it was hinted to also in Oscar's presentations, trees are part of the answers. A tree is part of the answer. Wood-based fibers offer a renewable, biodegradable alternative to oil-based materials. So basically, very simply put, the trees of today can be the fabrics of tomorrow, can be what we wear tomorrow or even already today. But this transformation, as we could see also in the other presentations, requires collaboration. It requires collaborations between all the actors of this value chain, those that are innovative, those that come up with new fibers, those that use new fibers. And I'm very happy that we have these two perspectives here today, one from the production and innovation side. Welcome to Mr. Krishna Manda, who is the global head of sustainability of the Lenzing Group. And then also a warm welcome to the design and retail side, Ms. Julia Aruni-Kirchner, Director of Impact and Innovations from the company Armed Angels. So we are very happy to have these two perspectives here today. And let us begin with Mr. Manda and the industrial shift. So how do we move the needle from polyester to wood-based fibers? Mr. Manda.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my slides as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Liliana, thank you for the introduction, also setting the scene for us today. And I would like to also thank the UNECE for the opportunity to show Lenzing's case in front of the audience. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. So first of all, I would like to share how Lenzing actually conducts business while supporting the productive use of forest, which ensures their healthy growth. Yeah, that's what previous speakers are also talking about. So I would cover how Lenzing business model works and what are the applications that we can make with our fibers, and what are the strong foundations we have in terms of forest management, and not only in the sourcing, but also in all other processes, how we embed sustainability in different stages of the value chain. That also I would like to actually cover today in a brief setting. So basically, I would like to start this whole by briefly showing the context and the reality check of the industry, right? So here, you can see on my slide, the consumption of fibers by the world from last 100 years, right, from 1900. And of course, you can see the growth of actually polyester-based or synthetic fibers, which is the gray area here, has grown rapidly from 1970s or 1980s, right? And more or less, cotton has grown, but actually it's stagnant. And the cellulosics are also growing steadily from 2010 onwards, right? But it shows to us how fashion industry heavily relies on fossil fuels, as Liliana has mentioned. And we see significant potential for the cellulose industry, but we also need to talk about what happens if we actually have unchecked growth of synthetics, right? Synthetics has their own challenges in terms of climate impacts and fossil fuel use, but also solid waste disposal in many parts of the world is also caused by not having enough options for disposal of these materials. At the end of the day, because of that problem, they are also kind of leaking into marine systems, water systems, also causing microplastics, which are going to end up in our own bodies, right? There are so many studies coming. So in this context, and there is this enormous growth potential, at least for cellulose fibers also we see, how do we ensure these regenerated cellulose fibers are growing in a responsible way? That is the most important thing, looking at what is happening with the climate change, with many speakers have spoken about some of the challenges. So I would like to share with you how we at Lenzing ensure this responsible growth. And you see here that we have been using trees from responsibly sourced forests and plantations, convert them into wood chips, and then the wood chips are cooked in a digester, and then we make pulp out of it after some distillation into different products. I will show you later. And then this fiber, which is in the fourth stage, is actually our product, right? So this fiber is sold to spinners who are making the yarns, and later on, you as a consumer get the garment after a few more steps in the textile value chain, right? But the foundation here is that we as Lenzing, making these fibers in 9 different facilities in different locations in the world, I mean, we are one of the unique companies in the world with global footprint because we have a facility in US and in UK. In Europe, we have 3 facilities, and China, Indonesia, and Thailand. So we have a global footprint. So the other thing is that we actually ensure our fibers are produced from renewable wood, from certified and controlled forests and plantations, and produced with a low environmental impact. I think that's the most important. And then I would like to cover how we do that. As lensing, I think many people may not be aware, we make cellulose, regenerated cellulose fibers, viscose, modal, and lyocell with the brand Stencil, Lensing, and Ecovero. And we have an experience of 80 years of innovation in the industry. And we are the first in the industry especially from the raw material production to commit to science-based target that is in alignment with the Paris. And we also have strong ESG performance, which is also shown with our top ranking in many different ratings and also benchmarks. And I would like to just mention that CDP AAA for forest, water, and climate, for integrating these aspects into our different business functions and business process and the strategy. And this is a really tremendous effort because there are only 23 companies in the whole world having a CDP AAA status out of more than 22,000 companies who have participated. So 23 out of 22,000 is, I'm really grateful for the work done by cross-functionally across the whole company. Yeah. And where are our fibers used, right? So you could see here, I mean, these pictures speak more than the words, but you can see it's various applications from intimates, right, which are close to the skin and our body. We can put it on our kids as well, right? So the little babies and those I also have a daughter, so I know how important it is. So the casual wear that you can see, denim and all those, and home textiles, for example, curtains, bed sheets and duvets and all those kind of things are also can be made with these fibers. So they are very versatile and they're touching your lives on a daily basis. That's the most important thing I wanted to mention. And so how does our lensing business model work? I think some of the speakers have mentioned about making more out of the wood, right? So I would like to mention that we actually source from sustainably managed forests and plantations, and then we usually use the fellings from the forest, right? Fellings are those, for many people who are not into forest management, are actually making space for other healthy trees so that there is enough water, sunlight, and nutrients. So those fellings are mostly used in our production if we use semi-natural forests. And then they are converted into wood chips, and those wood chips are fed into commercial scale biorefineries. Why I said commercial scale? Because we are talking about huge scales. We are talking about 150 to 200,000 tons per year. And what happens in a biorefinery is that you are actually, that's the crux of it, very high utilization of the material. So all the wood that you put in is coming out of the whole biorefinery as one of the co-products, one of the products you see on the right side of the graphic, right? First is we actually have, if you put 1 kg, 400 grams come, or 40% comes as pulp, and that pulp is used to make fibers of viscose, modal, lyocell, which is later gone into spinning, right? And there are also bio-based chemicals and products we actually recover from these, from the biorefinery, like xylose, which is actually called wood sugar. So when you are having chewing gums or mouth fresheners, this is actually the wood sugar, which is good for your teeth. There are so many other co-products, acetic acid, furfural, magnesium lignosulfate, soda ash. All these things are actually being recovered from our biorefinery and being sold. So this is around 10%. The remaining 50% is actually used for making electricity and heat from these biogenic sources. So it is actually replacing or avoiding the use of fossil fuels. So this energy is being used for our fiber making, right? So when you see this, this level of utilization, as I think somebody mentioned that there is only ash coming out of the energy production. That's the only waste we have. which also in some cases can be used for some other applications actually. So it's a very highly efficient system. And this is how lensing is actually running. It's 3 commercial scale biorefineries in Austria and Czech Republic and Brazil. So the foundation is that we are using 100% of the wood and pulp that we buy is coming from only certified and controlled sources. And there is a NGO called Canopy in Canada, and they're actually running a campaign for the last 10 years in the fashion industry to prevent deforestation. They're actually assessing how different man-made cellulose fiber producers are actually sourcing the forest. So I think if you look at that, so we are consistently ranking #1, while they are actually assessing independently the sourcing, conservation projects we do, transparency of our sourcing, and the innovation practices to reduce the virgin wood and all those things on a yearly basis. And in 2025, we were the top like last year's. So out of the 40 cellulose producers globally. So I think it shows that we take it very serious, and it's actually part of our DNA. We have been doing it even before this NGO is in place for last 40, 50 years. So this is actually the foundation Lensing has. And all our facilities have chain of custody certified by FSC. So everything is going with transparency and traceability. So not only that, we have been doing it at sourcing level, but if you look at these certifications, we are also ensuring the sustainability is embedded in the pulp production and the fiber production. So when you are doing it, so for example, all our facilities are actually EU Ecolabel certified for their the best performance in the industry. So EU Ecolabel is given by EU authorities and checked by independent verified auditors. And we also making our best facilities, best-in-class facilities with some ratings called HIG in the industry. I think people who knows it's about facilities, environmental things and facilities, social things. How do we ensure that they are the best performing in all those aspects? And all our fibers are biodegradable and compostable in different environments. This has been actually kind of verified by and also proved by independent institutions like Scripps Institute for Oceanography in California. And we also recently conducted a study with an independent institute called Hydra Institute in Germany, that they have created 125 scenarios where lab scale, but also real life cases, like what happens if there is something by mistakenly on the on a beach, tropical beach, or actually ended up into water. What happens to this, right? They found out of all these scenarios of 125 that cellulose fibers can actually biodegradable like natural materials like banana leaf or cotton, and within 100 to 200 days without causing much harm. So that is the most important thing coming out of this study, right? So, all in all, we have been able to actually make this much progress due to the partnerships we actually have in our value chain with our own suppliers to develop clean pulp and clean, chemicals with lower impact, but also our direct customers like spinners and others. And finally, the end customers, my colleague Yulia will talk about the innovation that we are partnering with them. And these are the people who are constantly innovating and pushing the boundaries to show the world how cellulose fibers can be used in many applications, right? So with lower impact than alternative fibers such as synthetics. That's the most important. So I would like to end my session or my presentation with a question: what can we change collectively when we start to question the norm and start challenging the assumption that synthetics can only provide you the best performance? If you can start to challenge this, there are many things and wonders can be created. So this is the next frontier for cellulose fibers and bioeconomy to reduce and avoid problems created by synthetics, such as climate impacts and solid waste disposal and microplastics in the environment. And where there is possibility, we can bring these products without compromising performance. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity and listening to me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Krishna. Very, very important presentation. We got already also a lot of questions. One I'm going to ask you immediately is about the tree species you're using. Is it one? Is it whatever comes? If you could give us an indication on that before we go to the next presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Liliana. I think we are actually sourcing from the Central Europe and also some other European countries here. The pulp also coming from Sweden and those. So we basically use beech spruce and also eucalyptus from other plantations in the world. From the plantations that are not adding too much stress on the environment. We are also very careful about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Krishna. I think this breaking the synthetic cycle is definitely very exciting about using wood-based fibers, and particularly how you control the entire value chain until it goes on, and where it goes to and what happens to it once the fiber leaves and you have the yarn and it goes into actually what we would then call a fashion product. We would like to hear from Ms. Kirschner, like how does this, all what we heard now, translate into innovation, into fashion, into a product that we as consumers can buy? Julia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me and for this awesome segue. I think I would love to pick up exactly on where Krishna has left off on the question of can we challenge the status quo of synthetics? And let me use this opportunity because I do think that we have quite an international crowd here, which is fantastic. To introduce Armed Angels just very briefly, that you know what we are all about. We at Armed Angels, we are a mission-driven fashion brand, so a brand with a purpose. What does that mean? It means for us that we're more than just your average fashion brand. We see ourselves more as a movement, as an accelerator. We stand for change and for challenging the status quo, and synthetics is definitely one of the challenges that we're facing as an industry and that we are challenging. And the fashion industry has begun or has been for some years now a very dirty industry that we can't really be proud of. We don't really want to wrap ourselves into it. Krishna mentioned his kids. Same goes for me. It is you care very much for what you wrap your kids into, and same goes for our body, our skins, and not touching anything toxic, right? So we want to show that challenging the status quo and changing the status quo is actually possible, doing it better is possible, and making a difference is possible. So what that means for us and how that translates into why forests and cellulosics are so important for us, I would like to already dive into quite deep into our what we call our Armed Angels material guide and our principles, because for Armed Angels it's not really about having a tiny capsule, you know, that might challenge a particular problem, and that is very big in marketing, but doesn't really move the needle. For us, we try to make this change on scale. So it means our whole collection. And where does fashion start? Well, it starts with us. It starts with our designers in our Cologne head office, sitting down and choosing what the garment should look like, what materials go in, and choosing basically the pathway for this specific garment. So let me introduce you our material principles and then show you how forests and cellulosic fibers, like Krishna has introduced them to you, are a great solution for all of these problems that we're facing as an industry. And principle one, and I think we can all agree on this, that this is the foundation and the key is quality is sustainability. So we obviously don't want to make a super fabulous sustainable garment, but it itches, it peels, it shrinks after one wash, and it basically falls apart before you even were able to fall in love with it, right? Fashion should not be a throwaway item, no matter what it is made of. Quality is a key pillar for that. And making sure that you design it in a way that you can wear it over and over again, you fall in love with it, it endures it all, from wearing it day in and day out, to repairing it, to reselling it if you don't love it anymore. That's what a good fashion piece should be all about. That takes us right to our principle number 2 for Armed Angels. This is choose for the planet. And choosing the right material sets the grounds for who we work with, where we work, and for sure the footprint on people and planet of a specific garment. So choosing a material for the planet with a low carbon footprint is essential, but remember principle 1, right? It's not about just choosing the lowest carbon footprint without looking at quality parameters. For us, it means using science-based data, best available data to make these choices. For example, choosing organic obviously over conventional, choosing recycled over virgin, choosing monomaterials wherever possible for circularity reasons. And then this takes us to principle 3, because I was saying using science-based data, and we all know the difficulties around that. Nature of oil. For us, nature holds the solution to the problems and not the oil industry. That is why we're cutting down on any fossil-based materials, may it be recycled or virgin. Even though synthetics often look low carbon on paper, or they look very recyclable on paper, it's still a system that we don't want to work with anymore, that we want to leave behind. We want to build materials that last and not materials that last forever. And now looking at our lovely forests again, and let's be a bit more specific, because we've learned quite a lot from Krishna already on how cellulosics are made, and that I think that overall what we have in our head when we think of forests and a fiber, can that even be nice to wear? Yes, 100%, and it actually tackles all 3 topics that we have here. So quality and sustainability, yes, I would say principle number 1, check, but only because we have great partners, and Lenzing is definitely one of those. So setting the right quality parameters obviously start with the partners that make the MMCFs, the cellulosic fibers. Choose for the planet. Cellulosics are a renewable resource, and if done responsibly, they can be a very good choice for the planet. And I see that somebody in the chat has already asked for that, specifically on carbon footprint and water, and I would include chemicals here. So if you choose a partner like Lenzing, and there are definitely others, and Krishna was mentioning the hot button report, where you can see all the partners that thrive for responsibly made cellulosics. But with Lenzing, for example, the chemicals are kept in a closed loop and recovered and reused, compared to conventional lyocell. We have reduced waste and wastewater, we have reduced carbon footprint, and that goes for many of the materials as well. But we all know the limitations of the PEFCR, so the product environmental footprint. So if you compare this to synthetics, synthetics might often come out as even better, but we're not addressing the full picture here, right? And that brings me to principle number 3, nature over oil. Cellulosic, wood-based fibers are not oil-based and not based from the fossil fuel energy. So naturally, they check our principle number 3. Having said that, and principle number 3 and being so important in what we do, Why is it so important for us that we see cellulosics and the forest as a solution for many of the topics that we have? Synthetics are everywhere, we know this, and the majority of the fiber production, as we saw earlier, is globally is polyesters right now, and majority of that even is virgin polyester, right? Synthetics have become the norm in our fashion industry, and especially in some categories. And one I want to pick out, which is the performance outerwear, and that is a category that is absolutely dominated by synthetics. And why is that? Mainly because the performance properties were always accounted for synthetics. So they offer wind resistance, durability, lightweight performance, all properties that we can easily fulfill with synthetics. So naturally, the industry would focus on improving synthetics instead of challenging whether we actually need synthetics in this product category. So if you wanted to make a performance outerwear jacket, your default would be polyester. If you wanted to be a little bit more responsible, you might go, recycled polyester to be received as more responsible, and then you slap a chemical coating on there, and you're good to go. Well, yes, you might be dry in rainy weather, but what the customer often doesn't realize is the costs that come with that to the environment and the people working in the industry. They derive from the oil industry, they're non-biodegradable, they're long-lasting, and what Krishna also mentioned is they shed microplastic throughout their life cycles. Microplastics are polluting the water, the soil, they're even entering our food systems. And while it sounds a little bit more responsible to go for recycled polyester, because then you're taking out the virgin factor, the oil industry, it only looks more sustainable because you're taking away resources from a fully circular system, which is the PET bottle industry. You're downgrading it to make it a fiber, and also recent studies have shown that the microplastic shedding is actually heavier with recycled plastics, right? So synthetics are harmful, they're increasingly unnecessary, and a systemic innovation is long overdue, and this is where we come in. We've asked the question that Krishna also asked you earlier, is how can we challenge the status quo? Can performance outerwear exist without fossil-based fibers? We put our heads together, and this is not just the Armed Angels team, by no means, this is a much wider group. Great partners like Lenzing, but not just. So we looked really at the whole supply chain, put our heads together to break this cycle, and I'm super happy to show you the newest product category for Armed Angels, which is naturally engineered performance outerwear. You see this? I don't usually sit in a webinar inside wearing an outerwear piece, but today I am because we've just launched this last week on Thursday. And let me show you a little video so that you have a little rest from my voice, and I hope you can hear the sound. I'm starting it.
Performance used to mean plastic, not anymore. We use a fabric made from Tencel lyocell fibers derived from certified wood sources, not oil-based synthetics. Free from harmful PFAs, engineered for high breathability on the inside, without compromising wind and light rain protection. Rethink performance. Wear what feels natural. Performance used to mean
Yes, so the result is this windbreaker that is entirely made out of Tencel lyocell. And I think somebody in the chat group was already asking, it's like, how do I know that something is made out of a fantastic Lenzing fiber? Well, in this case, yes, you can use it in marketing. Obviously, you can have hang tags. Some brands have that. We also have sometimes bright yellow hang tags that communicate this. But then again, at Armed Angels, there's so much to communicate on one single piece that sometimes that gets a bit out of hand. But to answer your question, there's always this very great. I don't know if you can see that because I can't see myself at the moment. But there's a care label, obviously, in every piece, and on that you would see it says 100% lyocell, and in brackets it says Tencel, which is the trademark from Lenzing, and then this is more responsibly made lyocell fiber and not conventional lyocell fiber, which is a cellulosic fiber made out of trees. So this is the windbreaker made out of tinsel. It has it does not rely on any synthetic membranes or PFA coatings. The fabric itself is engineered to provide wind resistance and breathability, and it really shows that it can be done without fossil-based fibers. And was it easy to do? Definitely not. It took us a long time in the making to come up with this and to get it to a point where we said, okay, this is actually a great product and we want to launch it. But it shows that this effort was really necessary and worthwhile doing. It does not rely on fossil fuels. It does not shed any microplastic. It does not have any harmful chemicals. And also, unlike synthetic fibers, the natural structure of lyocell here allows heat and moisture to escape easily. It dries quickly. It has a very comfortable microclimate. And when it's exposed to like light drizzle, a little bit of rain, the fabric density actually increases, so provides additional protection from the rain. So you can see it's not just an alternative really, but it's the better solution even. So this really was a journey, and I want to be 100% honest because that's what Armed Angels is about. When we set out for this journey, we said, okay, we're going to make this plastic-free outerwear, right? And we're going to build on this. This is going to become huge. And this is huge, and we are going to build on it. But it's only 99.9% plastic-free because on this little part here on the zipper, there's a tiny bit of plastic still. Which we couldn't get rid of, but that shouldn't stop us from being super, super happy with this, to celebrate it, be proud of this, continue this journey onwards. And I want to highlight again, this Armed Angels isn't the hero of this story. It is the great partnership that we have with the whole supply chain. So that's basically where I wanted to wrap us. Thank you for having me. I think it really shows this is a really cool project that shows how the whole supply chain can come together and to scale innovations and to push boundaries even further. This is only one of the products. I would love to show you even more products where we showed that cellulosics are the right choice instead of synthetics. But I want to keep it at that and not stretch the time even further. Back to you.
I'm sorry. Thank you very, very much. I find this very, very exciting because it shows that it goes mainstream. It shows that a solution is scalable. It shows that it can go circular. And it can break into areas, as you said, Julia, that were sort of off limits because everything that is performance wear and outerwear needs this layer of whatever it is. So, yeah, well, in the end, it's some toxic layer that we have there. We had questions in the chat about other fibers, and of course, other fibers do exist. And specifically, hemp was mentioned. I used to work in the fashion industry many years ago, and also then hemp was seen as an alternative, but hemp has certain characteristics that a lyocell or a tencel would not have. So I think it is very much the choice of the producer in the end, of the garment producer, which kind of fabric, and that can be hemp, why not? Is usable, but I let you answer the question. I would have thought it's that. It definitely has very, very good characteristics as well, and it's definitely usable. Julia, what would you tell?
Thank you. I think hemp is a really good example of another preferred fiber that we are using that brings in fantastic properties, especially when you talk about sustainability. So low water consumption, no pesticides and fertilizers needed on the ground, and so on and so forth. It is a fantastic fiber. Same goes for linen, by the way. And they're much more on that. But every fiber brings in a certain set of properties, a certain set of a hand feel of a visual and optics. And that's obviously quite different from a hemp linen to what a lyocell or a modal can bring to a fabric and later to a garment. I don't know, Krishna, you can probably dive way deep into the technical aspects here.
I can compliment you, but I think you covered the most important. Hemp can be grown in degraded lands as well, right? That's very interesting. Yeah. And hemp can be grown in Europe as well, which is also, since we are talking from these things, we also have actually made a limited edition tensile lyocell fiber with hemp pulp. But the amount of pulp that is available is really, really like inception stage. So there was a partner we were working with. So we were looking for alternative cellulose sources. It's not just only the forest-based wood fibers that we wanted to make. But also there are other cellulose alternatives which can go into it. Like we have orange pulp. We are looking into all those things. So hemp was definitely a candidate, but you don't have the scalability that you wanted to have because you have seen we are talking about 140 million tons in the global context, and hemp maybe a few thousand tons. I think it's not more than that, unfortunately, right now, but there is a great potential. Yeah.
Thanks much. I think what the big takeaway here is really systemic change is needed, and we are here already on our way towards this systemic change. And I thank both of you for really showing us that this is not a myth anymore. It is mainstream. To those who were asking about the labeling, even some big fast fashion producers use these fibers to produce their garments. It is marked there. Next time, maybe we are all consumers, look out for it. It's, as Julia said, her garments have this specific label, but also other garments do have labels. There are educative labels out there. Do look out, make better choices, and let's go forest-based fibers. And with that, I think we can hand over to Sarah. Thank you very much, Krishna. Thank you, Julia. It was very exciting to have you, both of you, here today with us. Thank you very much. Sarah, over to you, because we also want to see what comes down the lane in terms of innovation.
Thank you, Liliana. So we are now coming towards the end of our journey. We went from, and also the end of our allotted time for this event. So I will have the tough task to keep time for the experts on this panel. So we went from forest to cities to textile, and now we look at the space where innovation truly accelerates, the Innovation Lab. We will explore two different but complementary approaches to innovating with wood. On one side, we will look at wood as we know it as a whole, pushing its structural performance to new limits. And on the other hand, we will zoom into the microscopical level. We will break down the wood into its smallest components and see what new materials and applications it can come from there. But what unites these approaches is a common goal, which is to replace fossil-based and energy-intensive material with renewable, high-value solutions. So let's now begin by looking at wood in its most familiar form. I welcome David Olivgren from Modvion. He is the co-founder and concept engineer at the company, and he has also developed the patents on which Modvion modular concept is built on. He will present us the innovative approach of the company of using wood for wind turbine towers. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
So, thank you for inviting me here. It's been very interesting so far, and I'm
looking forward to reading all the chats and the questions in the chat. So my name is David, as was said. I'm the founder and concept engineer at Modvion. And what does Modvion do? You can see on the picture here. We design and build modular wind turbine towers made from engineered wood. We do that for the most powerful onshore turbines. But first I want to talk about a little my view on wood, because there are many views on wood. What is wood? Wood is a fibrous material carrying small solar chemical power plants. Really, that's what it does. Meaning the leaves and the needles where the photosynthesis takes place. And in forests, these power plants race to the sky to meet the most sunlight, also making them meet another form of energy, and that energy is wind. And therefore, nature has designed wood in tree trunks to be optimized for taking heavy dynamic loads over a very long period of time. And so my thinking is, what material would be the most suitable for making wind turbine towers? And in my view, that is wood, of course. So why build taller towers? That's what we all are seeing all over Europe, especially. Wind power is the leading renewable energy source in Europe nowadays. It's crucial for driving the green transition. And in wind power, bigger is better. Taller turbines reach stronger, more stable winds and can have longer blades to harvest more wind. This means producing more and cheaper energy. But taller turbines also mean taller and larger towers. The majority of permits in Europe allow for 150-meter towers or higher. Current steel towers above 100 meters at height are a major bottleneck because they're hitting transport limitations, slowing down the rollout and green transition. The only alternatives to these towers, for taller towers, are hybrids made of concrete and steel. And concrete and steel towers come with high prices and high CO2 emissions, of course. That's something we know. And this is where we come in. We have developed a patented modular tower system that makes the tallest wind towers easy to transport. So in the picture behind the text there, you can see a very big steel turbine tower. And that's the largest you can transport from a concrete or from a steel tubular tower. We do this by using engineered certified wood that is both light and strong. And it becomes very cost competitive the taller you build. And at the same time, we replace the emission-heavy steel and concrete with a material that stores carbon. So our towers are carbon negative because more carbon is stored in the wood than the emissions produced during the product life cycle. Here you see a module. It stores carbon. This module is about 10 tons. It contains 8 tons of pure carbon. When the wood grew in this tower and this module, it consumed 18 tons of carbon dioxide. So this is a storage of carbon, you can say. It gives a total reduction of carbon dioxide emissions of 50% for the wind power plants. And after the commissioning of the turbine, the modules are cut to beams, high-performing beams, because this is a high-performing material, can be used for building construction. And that way, the carbon will be bound for centuries. What makes Modvion unique isn't just wood, of course, because we build it in a special way. It's how we turn LVL. LVL is laminated veneer lumber. It's a veneer material. We turn those LVL boards into a high-performance tower system. And we build on more than 10 years of research of methods, material data, fatigue testing, simulation, and both lab and field validation. Very heavy work has been done, actually. The result is a strong, lightweight tower system. The material is actually 30% stronger than steel by weight. So what is the secret sauce in this? There are many ingredients in the secret sauce, and the first one is our manufacturing methods. We laminate curved-shaped raw modules that are robots machined to finished geometry with an accuracy of 0.2 millimeters. You see one of the robots standing there. It's a very large one, and the diameter of that blade you can see there is 1100 millimeters. The modules are protected by heavy-duty and long-lasting coating. The second ingredient is our installation system that builds on our easy-to-transport modules and get them to site, and our joining techniques. The modules are being joined together to form sections that we then stack and join with our very strong joint methods. And the joints are the third ingredient. The gluing on site method, because we don't use any screws or bolts in a protected environment inside the tower, is a fast and efficient way to create high-performing joints that are free of bolts and also therefore maintenance-free. Maintenance is a very high cost in wind power life. Our transverse joint is actually the strongest timber joint in the world, and we can discuss more of this in the chat if you want. And of course, working inside a wooden structure is much nicer than working inside concrete or steel tower. This is the tower we have seen pictures from. We have moved now from idea to industrial reality, of course. This is the Wind of Change Tower power plant. It's our first commercial tower. The total height is 150 meters. The hub height is 105 meters. It carries Vestas V90 2-megawatt turbine. And it's been delivering energy to the Swedish grid for more than 2 years now. Almost next month, it will be 20,000 hours, actually. So what's next? We are now developing our Generation 2 platform. It's for the 6-7 megawatt range. And our 6.4 megawatt tower design is already third parties verified. And these designs are also optimized for volume production with high margins, because it's a very price-pressed industry, the wind industry. We are working with all the largest Western wind turbine manufacturers. Vestas is an investor in the company, a partner since 2021, with the intention of integrating wooden towers into future offerings. We have integration plans in the making with Enercon and GE, with Nordex and Siemens Gamesa not far behind. So there's a big interest for what we do. And in our LOI pipeline, it's worth about 1 billion euros with major developers like Vattenfall, RWE, RES, to name a few. So we clearly see that the demand is there. The thing now is to meet that demand, of course. So I thank you very much for having me here, and don't hesitate to contact me or our company. We have a very easy name to remember. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you for sharing the ingredients to Modvion secret sauce. Much appreciated. But no, in all seriousness, it's amazing to see a material as traditional as wood being transformed into high performance solutions for renewable energy. In the interest of time, we will hear from you again in a little bit, but in the interest of time, I will move on to our other speaker, Mr. Quentin Dumila. As we now zoom into, like I said, the microscopic level of wood and see what new materials and application can come from it. Quentin is a RETEC Center Fellow and expert in circular economy, impact investing, and development economics. and he will take us through this journey of innovating with wood. Quentin, you have the mic.
Thanks, Sarah, for the invitation, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you all see my screen and hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Quentin Dumouya. I'm an expert in circular economy and impact investing. I have a background in finance and also did a thesis in economics. So I studied my career at the World Bank in Asia as an economist. Then I worked in finance, and then I came back to France to work on circular economy, on the scaling up and fundraising of innovative technologies like CIRC, that is a technology financed by Bill Gates doing chemical recycling of polycotton, and that recently announced a partnership with Lenzing. So today I'm advising investment funds, international institutions, and also governments. And I'm going to present you innovative materials made from wood. So first, wood is a lignocellulosic biomass, just like agricultural byproducts or crops. So it can be deconstructed into three core elements: specialty cellulose, lignin, and cellulosic sugars. The specialty cellulose can be used as barrier coatings for packaging, as microbeads for cosmetics, or as sustainable dyeing for textiles. The lignin can be used to produce bioplastics, adhesives, or asphalt, and the cellulosic sugars can be used to produce bioplastics or biofuel. The first innovation I'm going to present you is called Fibonol. So this is their plant in Estonia. Actually, they focus on the deconstruction of woody biomass into its three core components, but they have also developed application downstream in the value chain. The technology was patented in 2012 and developed by engineers from the MIT, and industrial capacities were developed in Estonia. So the technology can deconstruct wood chips in 20 seconds into specialty cellulose, lignin, and cellulosic sugars. They do not focus on softwoods that are used for furniture construction, but they focus on hardwood residues, which are often burnt or exported to pulp mills at a low value. So they have a strong competitive advantage because they can convert 90% of woody biomass into high value-added products, when traditional technologies can only convert 40 to 50% of this biomass into high value-added products, while the rest is used for low-value energy. On top of this, their products have a high purity. Their lignin is non-sulfonated, for instance, which implies a high cost competitiveness and opens new markets for bio-based molecules that I'm going to present you with. So they have many projects. 12 of them are being co-funded by the European Union. For specialty cellulose, they're working with Arkema, which is a French chemical company, and DS Smith, which is a UK packaging company, to produce bio-based coatings for packaging. They're also producing elements to reinforce construction material and also producing battery binders. With lignin, they produce green asphalt. They can also produce adhesives for the plywood industry to remove cancer-causing phenolic resins. They can also produce bio-based plastics for the car industry with BASF, or to replace PU foam in running shoes with Adidas. And with the sugars, they can replace palm oil in food, produce biofuel or bioplastics. So basically, they remove many petrol molecules from our daily lives. And they have raised 135 million euros so far. They have a demo plant of 30K tons per year, and they plan to raise 600 million euros in the coming years to build a commercial scale plant of 300K ton. The next innovation is called SparkCell. So SparkCell converts specialty cellulose into two elements: sustainable dyeing for textiles and bio-based alternative to metallic sequins for clothes. The technology, the company was actually founded in 2022 as a spin-off of Cambridge by a French founder. And as you can see on this picture, the butterfly and the plant have vibrant color. This is due to the microscopical structure at their surface, which can reflect light into one given color. So SparkCell is industrializing that process. What they do is they use microcrystalline cellulose because the crystals can naturally reflect light in two colors. But when they are in a dispersed configuration, they do not reflect light into a specific color. They have to be ordered. So the technology assembles the crystals from a dispersed to an ordered configuration to reflect a given color, and they can produce cellulose films, sequins, glitters with an unlimited palette of colors. They can use cellulose from the wood industry, from the paper industry, even from recycled cotton from textiles waste. They have a strong competitive advantage because their material is drop-in for dye houses and textile mills. So there is no capital investment needed, and the technology reduces the amount of material, water, and energy needed, which results into a really high cost competitiveness. They're already cost competitive against traditional synthetic dyes, and they plan to be 50% cheaper by 2030. So it opens many market opportunities, including in textiles. So as you can see, this dress on the left-hand side that is already being commercialized, is using Spark Cell, both for the blue color, but also for the tiny, round, shiny shapes, which are usually made out of metals, but that are now bio-based thanks to Spark Cell. So they worked with a British designer and won the Queen Elizabeth II Award for British Design. They are accelerated in France by LVMH and financed by the Circular Innovation Fund, which is a fund backed by L'Oréal in France. They worked also in the cosmetic space. They work in the car industry with BMW, in packaging as well. And they have a strong impact because they remove synthetic dyes, toxic chemicals, and metals from clothes and then from ocean pollution. So they feature in the latest Netflix documentary Plastic Detox thanks to this. And they also improve the recyclability of clothes because they remove these metallic pieces, which are a disruptor to recycling. So their production is done at the commercial scale with outsourcing partners in Portugal. They have raised 11.5 million euros so far with leading investors like Cambridge, Ars Venture in Vietnam, Catapult in Norway, but most recently Swan in France. They just raised 4.2 million euros to build their first plant in the UK and plan to build new plants all across Europe. The third technology is called nature beads. So nature beads is actually converting specialty cellulose into microbeads for cosmetics and specialty chemicals. Basically, they replace all the polluting microplastic found in blood, placenta, clouds with bio-based microbeads. The company was founded in 2018 as a spin-off of the University of Bath in the UK. And the first plant was commissioned in Italy in December. So they use microcrystalline cellulose and dissolve it into a solution to form a liquid. Then the liquid is extruded through a fine tubular membrane with microholes to form tiny droplets. And then these droplets are solidified to form solid beads. They can use cellulose from the wood industry, from the paper industry, as long as it is clean and without lignin. And they have a strong competitive advantage as well because cellulose is stable in cosmetic and paints formulation. Their process is highly efficient, which results in a high cost competitiveness. So they are already cost competitive with plastic beads used in cosmetics. They are still a bit more expensive than the ones used in paints, but they will become more competitive with economies of scale. So it opens many market opportunities. This plastic microsphere can be used in cosmetics and home care as rheology agents, in your lipsticks, in creams, in detergents. They can be used in paints for construction and furniture. They can be used as well as active ingredients carrier for the production of vaccines or for slow-release fertilizers, and they can be used for the tannery of leather in the textile sector. So basically, they phase out microplastics from all these industries by replacing them with biodegradable microbeads. And there's an ongoing regulation in the EU to phase out these microplastics. So nature beads is a solution to this problem. So this is their plant in Italy, which was commissioned in December. The commercial supply is going to start this quarter. They raised 11 million euros so far with leading investors, including Regeneration VC, which is an investment fund backed by Leonardo DiCaprio, operating both in the US and in Europe. They also have investors in Italy and in Singapore. And the next steps for them would be to establish offtake agreements with partners and to raise Series B fundings to build a commercial scale plant. So the key takeaways is that there's a global competition to attract these best technologies. They represent a potential to build integrated industrial clusters downstream of the value chain. They're also a lever to foster reindustrialization in high value added markets. And they're a lever to strengthen the competitiveness, the sovereignty, the resilience, and the health as well of our economies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Quentin. I know it was a very rich presentation, so thank you so much for keeping to your 8 minutes. I think part of the objective of this last segment of the event was for the speakers to say, wow, I didn't know you could do that with wood. And I think your presentation nailed it, as well as with David's presentation. Who would have thought you could make wind turbine with wood? Certainly not me. But what strikes me the most about both examples is that innovation isn't just about the material itself, but it's about transforming ideas from the lab or the pilot stage into solutions that can actually operate at scale and have an actual impact. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts quickly on this, and I'm sure the audience will be too. And I wanted to ask you, what have been the biggest barriers that made it possible to move from the laboratory or pilot examples to real life applications? David, if you want to go first.
Yeah, of course. There's the simple answer. Of course, it's always money, because what we do, we're building really large pieces of infrastructure and money to both to start building the machines and all that, and also scaling up. That's where you have a really big value to pass to build factories. Then you need multi-million euros, up to billions. So that is, of course, something. And also when you enter into an industry which is very regulated and you have to certify everything, and when you do that with a new material, you have to adapt to certifications that are made for materials that are not yours. So we have to comply to certifications made for concrete and steel, for example, because a wind power plant is not a building; it's a machine. So we have, and in some part, and also the certifications are very different in different parts of the world. So it doesn't really help to CE mark or have you have a certification from TÜV Süd in Germany. You also have to have a DIP certification and so forth. So that is that's a heavy load that we're working with. We're doing it very well, actually, but it's really consuming. So.
Thank you, David. Any lessons from you, Quentin?
Yeah, sure. So actually what we see is that the most difficult step for innovative technologies to scale is to go from the pilot plant to the commercial scale plant. So for this, they need to secure feedstock. They also need to secure customers through offtake agreements. So for instance, Lenzing and Armored Angles could be customers of the technologies and innovation I presented. They also need to secure financing, so non-dilutive subsidies, but also private capital, and be cost competitive at scale. So they would need also regulation to help them in that regard. And just to follow on the examples I presented, Fibenol is going to raise 600 million euros soon. Sparkcell is building its own plant, but is looking for sites in Europe and co-location sites with textiles companies and cosmetics companies. And NatureBeads is going soon to build its commercial scale plant. So all these technologies are in this phase currently and need these resources.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you both for sharing your insights. I think your experiences shows that breakthroughs often come hand in hand with challenges, but when they actually succeed, the impact can be enormous, both for the industry and the planet itself. So thank you so much. There are a couple of comments for you in the chat to read if you have 1 second. But as we come to the end of today's event, I would like to thank you, all the speakers, for their inspiring presentations and for sharing their expertise and for dedicating time to International Day of Forests. Of course, thank you to all participants for joining us, for engaging with the content, and for sharing your questions in the chat. I see a lot of exchange going on. All material presented today will be made available online so that you can revisit the ideas and innovation that we have explored. And yeah, we hope that this event has sparked new ideas, conversations about the power of wood and forests. And thank you, and happy International Day of Forests.